Halloween is a tradition beyond time. What was once a day of saints has become the night of sinners, and nothing rings more true than the sin of horror games from across the endless stretch of time.
Welcome to 2004, a year that's been great for video games. After all, by the end of the year, we'll have gotten 2 new 2D Zeldas, Doom 3, Pikmin 2, which rocks, and a Paper Mario game that I cannot put down. Oh, and Silent Hill 4.
This game's not what you'd think. To a degree, you could even say that it's not a Silent Hill game. For those unaware, the last 3 games all take place in Silent Hill, an accursed town with cults, murder, and sometimes straight up a portal to hell.
Now, Silent Hill 4 The Room instead takes place exclusively in apartment room 302. Sorta. See, if I'm explaining this correctly, while you never technically leave the room, Silent Hill does what Silent Hill does, and you'll see.
The game starts with our protagonist, Henry, waking up in his apartment covered in rust and blood.
Sounds like a good night out to me.
But then we're introduced to one of the best and worst additions to this installment, first-person gameplay. As a first-time mechanic in the franchise, it feels pretty clunky. And I think that's by design.
To properly explain what I mean, it feels like GoldenEye on the N64. See, back on the N64, you only had one C-stick. So, when you would walk forward and backwards, you would move the stick up and down. But if you move the stick left and right, you would actually look in that direction. This mostly made sense on the N64 because that's the best you could do. And it worked out well enough. But on the PS2, there's no excuse to have it like this. There is always 2 C-sticks available. So why did they do it?
Initially, I hated this. Why can't I just use the second stick to look around while walking and strafing with the other? And then I realized, I hate this. It's the worst, and that's great. I have to walk through this narrow hallway, then turn to see what possibly lies around the corner. It's the best and easiest way for them to build suspense. Having you spend a decent amount of time in this game being locked up inside this claustrophobic room with sharp corners all around, being completely unable to see threats until you're fully vulnerable to them, is terrifying. Going into this game blind, you have no clue what to expect, and it revels in that.
But after a while, there's not much to do here. There's a laundry room there, a broken TV there, and a peephole to spy your neighbor right there, but otherwise, not much else. Except for whatever that was.
Checking out on that sound, we see that our bathroom recently got remodeled with an addition of a brand new hole.
Now, I'm not really the kind of person to judge, but if I found a random hole in my bathroom, I probably wouldn't put anything in it. In fact, I'd probably call the cops.
But I guess since Henry's phone lines are down, the only option for entertainment is to climb right in. And that's when the crap hits the otherworldly fan. We seem to have appeared in a subway station, and as we traverse through, we meet a woman named Cynthia, who tells us we're simply in a dream. Anyways, Cynthia gets stabbed, and we crawl through another cold circle to return home.
Excuse me, what? In a spoiler-light summary of this game, you're essentially crawling through this hole and discovering different otherworlds, solving puzzles, and avoiding getting yourself into a little pickle I call death. So far, this game is generally pretty good. Although I would say it's best played in a dark room with you, the game, and some TV static to keep you company. And while it may be a controversial opinion, I have to say that Five Nights at Freddy's sister location is one of the best horror games released this year. And, while being as spoiler-light as possible in Part 1, let me tell you why.
The game starts out with a duologue discussing a new animatronic from Freddy's Animatronics.
She can dance, she can sing, she can even dispense ice cream.
With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton.
This is important for the context of the story and the game. See, Five Nights at Freddy's has a stupid long history, despite the first game only releasing 2 years ago. There's hidden secrets, there's novels, there's even a website with a hidden story inside of it. But if I were here explaining the entire story, we'd be here for a decade. But this game is something special.
I would certainly argue in many regards that last year's Five Nights at Freddy's 4 was a far more horrifying game in terms of simple measures like jump scares and ambiance. However, Sister Location delivers a far more existential fear. Continuing on with the first night, we get a general feel of the mechanics of this game. You're an engineer moving between different rooms, ensuring all the animatronics work right. On this first day, nothing in particular goes wrong. It's day 2 where the crap hits the ominously quiet desk fan.
Right away, there's already a few negatives and positives. First of all, the humor. Anytime a character talks, there's going to be some humor or comedic bit with it, and it feels like the game isn't taking itself seriously, which it isn't. But this could actually be a good thing, because whenever there's going to be some scary moment up ahead, the game's going to add some humor right before it, which is the perfect thing to make you drop your guard, and then you'll be terrified all over again.
Next on the list is how repetitive this game is. On your first go-round, this will feel like the most unique game in the series, thus far. But the issue comes around when you try and replay the game multiple times. See, every night is fully scripted. That guarantees hardly any variety between playthroughs. Now personally, I don't find this as bothersome as others might.
Truly, no horror game is going to be as good on the second or third go-round. It's the first time experience that determines just how good it'll be. And I believe as we continue on to night 2, the horror only gets much, much better.
Nope. After many near whatever would happen if those guys got 2 experiences, we continue forward through Ballora Gallery with a stalking ballerina lady, till we get into the breaker room with good old Freddy, waiting at the door to give us the classic Fredbear Squeeze. These 2 sections can be tedious if you die frequently, but when you have to slowly crawl through Ballora Gallery, listening out for her song, it's tense. And it's so uncomfortable having to rush through powering on all the breakers while also keeping an eye out for Freddy, who's breathing down your neck.
But once you finally push through, your shift is over and you're good to head home and watch some TV. Thus concludes our first section on Sister Location. See, this game is fantastic, but I would feel awful to spoil it to you without at least warning you to play the game yourself first. See, discovering all these different story bits is exactly what pushed it over the top as my favorite horror game this year. And there's been plenty of other great horror games released this year. It's just, this game is timeless. Time will go to show that this game is art and should be treated as such. At long last, Dead Space 2 is here. After 3 years and a massive cliffhanger in Dead Space 1, I'm here to say that the wait was totally worth it. Now, going forward with the video, there's going to be massive spoilers for Dead Space 1, but we won't hit any major spoilers for Dead Space 2 until the second section of this video.
When we left Isaac off in Dead Space 1, he had been attacked by a ghostly apparition of his dead girlfriend.
That's rough, buddy.
That would be bad enough on its own. However, I can tell you that it doesn't end there for Isaac and this version of Nicole.
For a quick summary of the first game, our protagonist, Isaac, is an engineer sent out to repair the USG Ishimura. As it turns out though, everyone at the party last night took some wild crap, and now we have a spaceship filled with these necromorphs. Now by the end, Isaac found out that his girlfriend, Nicole, who he's been trying to save, was actually dead the entire time. Any time throughout the game where he was interacting with her, it was actually a hallucination created by this alien monolith, and it's officially driven him insane.
Dead Space 2 begins with an exposition dump for the audience, who might have skipped or forgot what I just told you. However, this part of the game is actually pretty great at conveying information, while still feeling natural due to it being an insightful interrogation. But the interrogating doesn't last long, because Ghost Girlfriend felt a little ignored and jumped on this table to whisper sweet nothings to Isaac.
That's when we get into the gameplay, and boy, tell the saints that this game is fantastic. Horror games aren't typically known for great gameplay, but that's because they're like glorified point-and-click adventures. This game, however, has got the stuff. It feels so good in every way important. And while sure, the gameplay is essentially the same as the last one, who cares? I'm reviewing this game, and not that game. And we need to appreciate just how fantastic it is. And don't even get me started on the immersion. Everything feels so cinematic. It's like I'm on my way to Jupiter with HAL 9000 and the alien. This game doesn't feel like a video game. It feels like a movie or something we've lived through. And that's in large part thanks to the heads-up display, where no feature is permanent. You can see your health by looking at your character, and your recharge by looking at your character, or ammo by looking at the bullets. It's just so perfectly laid out.
It's the best way to completely and utterly involve you with the horror. I couldn't imagine a better way to put me in the game other than strapping a TV onto my face like a virtual boy. We start the playable portion of the game out being locked in a hospital after losing most of our memory from the previous few years. That's when we're freed by a guy named Franco. Franco really seems like a great companion to have in this beginning section, so of course, that's when the crap hits the dismembered necromorph covered fan, because Franco gets gutted and alienified.
Well, that's too bad!
It turns out that this space station has also been overrun with necromorphs, much like the ship of the original game. Currently, our only goal is to get through this station alive.
Again. Though nothing can go Isaac's way, because everyone's trying to enlist him for some activity. I don't get exactly what Isaac has that other people don't, but since no one else can survive these slow aliens, yeah, might as well.
The story of this game remains one excellent piece in this beautiful Dead Space pie. But before we continue on with that, we should gander a little longer at the core gameplay. As a certified idiot when it comes to any video games outside Nintendo, the mechanics here are presented perfectly so that I can understand them inherently.
I'm shooting a boss, but it's taking no damage? Oh, I gotta shoot the yellow bits. The timeline superpositions are diverging? Oh, well, all you have to do is...
Play Garden of Banban 7. I mean, it's not a very good game, let alone horror game, but you need to play it. Though, if it's good new horror games you want to talk about, then look no further than Silent Hill 2. Again. Whether it's Dead Space from last year, or Last of Us 2, Until Dawn, and Silent Hill 2 this year, we're getting nothing but retreading and remakes in the horror genre. Though, that's not exactly new for horror, is it? From the 13 movies in the Halloween franchise to the 10 Saw films, there's way too many sequels and remakes within horror, and the same goes for video games. Sure, many can be great, but when there's already 11 games in the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise after 10 years, you gotta wonder when it's gonna start getting tired. Except, I gotta say, Five Nights at Freddy's was a poor example here. The latest game, Into the Pit, is incredible. While FNAF hasn't had the strongest position in the last few years, especially with Security Breach, Into the Pit brings a breath of fresh air, despite the unusual story premise. There's not much I need to say about the premise other than time-traveling ball pit. The entire story of this game is impossible without some magical ball pit that just happens to be a time machine. Oh, and quick spoilers, they never explain that. But before we get too deep into the game, we have to adore these graphics. Let's Plays obviously show off what it looks like, but nothing can compare to what it looks like when you're playing the game yourself. Everything is just so stunning. The designs, both creepy and cool, are perfectly conveyed in this art style, and I really hope this studio makes more games similar to this. We play the game as Oswald, somewhere around the late 2000s, when we're dropped off at a rundown pizza place to waste time for a couple hours. Seeing nothing else to do, Oswald jumped into this blocked off ball pit to which he emerges on the other side in 1984 at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. It's a pretty cool place considering the other option, at least it was, until the crab hits the time display supernatural fan, and the murderin' rabbit goes a-murderin'. Oswald nearly escaped, but when Daddy-O starts lecturing him about going into the strange ball pit, our friendly old rabbit drags him in to check it out and performs a parent trap, swapping himself with the dad to become Oswald's new father. I definitely can't say that's not unique of this game, but that's kinda exactly what that is. See, Into the Pit is originally a short story in FNAF's Goosebump type books, and the game's a pretty faithful adaptation of it, and that's not a bash at all. Except it definitely adds to the problem of remakes and remasters within the horror genre. Another example of that is, like I said earlier, Silent Hill 2. A game that everyone wanted, but also no one wanted, because in reality, what we all needed was a brand new return to form for the series, not a retread. That being said, the original Silent Hill 2 was already a masterpiece, and bringing it into the modern day with instant load times and beautiful graphics can only make it better.
So as a direct remake of the original game, with the story remaining nearly exactly the same, Silent Hill 2 will be pretty well known at this point. But let's go on.
It starts out with us listening to a letter from our protagonist James's dead wife, Mary, and how she's apparently still alive, simply hiding within their special place of Silent Hill, Maine.
Since James assumed his wife was, dead, he decided to trek around Silent Hill to find out once and for all. But that's when the demon gets out the bag.
In classic Silent Hill fashion, the whole town seems ghosted and ghouled, with a strong fog all around and weirdly deformed demons hanging out. Henry has to follow clues to find exactly where Mary's hiding.
The game takes some interesting turns from here, but before we get any further, I have to tell you to play the game yourself first, whether it's the $70 remake or the original one, because once you know the monster, there's no turning back. Now, while each of these horror games all have their negatives, there's something timeless about all of them. Silent Hill 4, The Room. Dead Space 2, Five Nights at Freddy's sister location. Silent Hill 2 and Into the Pit are just a few timeless horror games. They might not be the best games. None of them are perfect. They all build unique horror experiences. But the fright doesn't cease until part 2.
It seems like our friend Jack is struggling quite a bit, but you need not be fearful. Monsters don't hide under the sheets. The real monster is the one that lives within your head. And sometimes it's that which is on the screen that brings out the terror most.
I am so excited to return to Dead Space 2. Now that you've played the game, you can surely agree that it's amazing. The gameplay is just half the puzzle though, because while the story was already super intriguing in the first half, it goes full psychological horror here.
Where Dead Space 1 relied mainly on the horror of the unknown world beyond us, Dead Space 2 is about the unknown within. The aliens are definitely real here, but the overarching antagonist is certainly a product of Isaac's mind.
Remember Isaac's girlfriend who's dead, but it's actually a ghost demon thing? Yeah, that's actually a hallucination made by the alien markers.
These visions of Nicole continue to haunt Isaac throughout the game. With his fragile mental state, she varies from a cold girlfriend to the spawn of Satan in a woman's body. When the climax of this game is nearing, as Isaac nears the marker to destroy it, Nicole drags him into his own mind to make him reborn.
Considering Isaac doesn't want an alien goth girlfriend, for some reason, the game ends with him and Nicole fighting inside his mind to break the connection that she and the marker has on him. And in the end, the marker is finally destroyed. For now. This game has an excellent taste in psychological horror, because what's scarier than the monster within? Even if that monster is created by an alien monolith that I still don't understand. But with that, I can't wait until Dead Space 3. Remember to compost your leftovers, and as always, Night 3 of Sister Location picks up right where we left off, and Mike's new job is to do maintenance on Funtime Freddy.
As you'd expect, it's not going to be easy having to trek across Foxy's Funtime Auditorium to reach Freddy. Once we get there, we have to follow a series of steps and a game of cat and mouse to complete it. Everything's going just as planned.
If you thought the previous nights were weird, you haven't seen anything yet. Night 3 ends with Foxy jumping you, and you wake up to Night 4 when you're stuck in a springlock suit.
Ballora got scooped. Now you gotta protect yourself from springlock failures and mini arenas. After 3 whole minutes of torture, the night ends and you go home.
At this point, I wouldn't even come back to work. It couldn't be worth it. Or could it? See, that's where we have the death minigames.
Each death has the chance to show you a Circus Baby minigame, and if you can fully complete it, you'll witness this scene.
It's a callback to the beginning, and different voice lines we hear throughout the game.
Daddy, just once let me go play with her. She's so pretty and shiny.
This reveals to us that Circus Baby is actually a child who was scooped. But why would our player character Mike care about that? See, that child was Mike's sister. This is terrifying knowledge. Put yourself in Mike's shoes. Knowing your little sister has become a bloodthirsty, mechanical monster is truly an existential terror.
Night 5 is the final night. It starts with us performing maintenance on Baby to prepare her for the scooping room. Once that's completed, we continue through to the scooper, where we see remains of every robot scooped, and then we're scooped.
Yikes.
That's where the main game ends. More accurately, we're stuffed full of animatronics and sent on our way.
This game has very simple gameplay, but the story digs deep. Nothing can prepare you for the existential dread of realizing your family is the same robots that were stalking you and guiding you. Additionally, I can't imagine being filled with robot to be a very fun experience. But with that, let's hope this franchise ends not too long from now. And as always, remember when we talked about demons and cult circles in Silent Hill? Well, that's happening in Room 302 as well.
Each time Henry finishes exploring these different otherworlds, he can reach a new one. In these, he witnesses the death of different people, whether it's Cynthia from the first otherworld in the subway, or the subsequent ones. We have to wonder, who and what is doing this? To explain that, we need to learn a little bit about Walter Sullivan.
Years prior to the events of this game, there was a serial killer named Walter Sullivan. His parents abandoned him as an infant and left him in the very same room, 302. Believing it would somehow purify the world, Walter set out to do the 21 Sacraments ritual, which entails killing 21 people.
By the events of Silent Hill 4, he had killed at least 15 people. But when we're playing, Walter's actually already dead. In this ritualistic rampage, Walter made himself one of the victims and sacrificed his human body to ascend to a ghostly form. When we, the player, Henry, travel between different otherworlds, witnessing varying murders, that's actually a ghost form of Walter committing them to complete his 21 sacraments.
At the end of this game, Henry and his neighbor confront Walter and a younger version of himself in a fight for survival. There's various endings, but if you lose this fight, Walter becomes reborn and reunited with Room 302. Alternatively, if you get one of the good endings, the younger Walter seems to fade away, which seems to represent Walter finally losing and passing on.
I am very satisfied with this game. I feel like it gives just enough information to understand what's happening, but without knowing the full truth. See, personally, I believe that most of this was a dream or hallucination. I don't believe we can trust everything we're shown, and that's so fun.
It's an assault on the psyche in the best way. Even considering the story at face value, a broken boy, abandoned by his parents, driven to kill to be reunited with his mother, is so interesting. But with that, I hope you'll hug your mother. And as always, and if it's uniquely frightening horror experiences you want, then we have to reunite with Into the Pit. Where else could you find a time-traveling ball pit to act as a mediator for the interpersonal drama between you and your dad? Maybe I'm looking too deep into this.
The rest of the game consists of Oswald moving between his house, the school, and the ball pit to discover what's happening and how to save his father and friends. Throughout the 5 nights you search, you can save different children until you finally find your father tied up and unconscious.
While time passes normally in the current day, it seems to pause in 1984 whenever Oswald's not presently observing it. Now, I would expect it to flow at a constant rate, but what would I know about that?
In the end, Oswald's father is saved, and depending on how much you played the game, you can get 4 different endings.
The game ends on a simple but sweet moment where Oswald escapes from the Yellow Rabbit. Now, my big conspiracy about this game is that the ball pit wasn't real or a time machine in the first place. My thought is that it's probably a dream or something. Why? I don't know. But I feel like the ball pit means something. Maybe it's supposed to bring Oswald closer to his dad. Or maybe it's just a magic ball pit. I don't know. I'm not game theory. I'm just a guy who's about to spoil Silent Hill 2.
Decades after it originally released. But this game is great. When James is exploring Silent Hill, searching for his dead, possibly not dead wife Mary, he meets a woman named Maria. Oddly enough, while she already has a similar name to Mary, she also has strikingly similar characteristics of Mary as well. It's almost like...
Yeah, Maria is Mary. Or rather, Maria is what James wishes Mary was like. Okay, here's the bombshell. Mary didn't die 3 years ago. In fact, she died only a couple days ago. And guess who killed her? James. But why?
Well, James wanted to end her suffering that she's had from dealing with her illness. But now he's filled with guilt, and that's why he blocked it out. Until now.
Silent Hill 2 is interesting in the fact that most of this is certainly within James's head. James is an unreliable narrator in the very sense of the word. The psychological distress by realizing this is unparalleled, which makes it one of the most timeless horror games of all time. The horror is not about the monsters or even the story. It's about how it makes us feel. And this game makes me feel awful. But that's what the season's all about. I'm dressed in a chicken costume for heaven's sake. But it's all worth it. These timeless masterpieces keep the spirit alive. The spirit of Halloween and All Hallows Day. Remember not to reach too much candy. And as always, keep creepy. Keep creepy. Bye.
Video games will always be synonymous with horror. And while Halloween may stem from holy origins, our sin only drives it further into the pits of hell. The countless monsters created in days past shall live on forever through remastering, sequels, recreations, and the enduring fear of generations yet to come. But yet remember, it's not the monsters under the sheets that kill. It's the demons within our minds that conquer reality. And I ask you not to be afraid of releasing it unto the world for all to see. We all need a good fright once in a while.